I never meant to notice her. That's the truth. Most mornings, I cut through the laundromat on 6th just to avoid the busier street. It's a habit, nothing more. The machines hum, the smell of detergent sits heavy in the air, and I usually just walk straight through. But that morning, she was there. She sat with a paperback open in her lap, a half-finished cup of coffee balanced on the folding table beside her. Dark hair loosely pinned, shoulders relaxed in a way that didn't look careless so much as practiced. She wasn't waiting for anyone. That's what caught me. The kind of stillness people don't wear when they know they're being watched. I slowed. She glanced up once, eyes meeting mine for half a second before dipping back down to her page. "Morning," I said, though my voice sounded thinner than I meant. She didn't smile exactly. More like the corners of her mouth adjusted, as if considering whether to give me one. Then she said, "You're early today." I froze. Early? It took me a moment to realize she must have seen me before, slipping through this place, invisible as I thought I was. I didn't know I had a schedule. I tried to joke, rubbing the back of my neck. She closed her book partway, her thumb still inside the pages. Everyone does, whether they admit it or not. That was the first time I noticed how steady her voice was. Not loud, not sharp, just enough weight to it that I found myself standing there longer than I meant to, fumbling with the strap of my backpack. "You live upstairs, right?" she added, after a pause. "Across the hall," I said. She nodded once, like she'd known it all along. It should have ended there. Just neighborly recognition. But for some reason, I sat down in the cracked plastic chair across from her. "I'm just cutting through." "I don't actually." I gestured vaguely at the machines. "Do laundry," she said. Her eyebrow lifted, teasing without fully committing. I laughed, too quickly. "Not here." The hum of the dryers filled the gap. I caught myself folding the edge of a receipt in my pocket over and over, my thumb pressing down the crease, straightening it again. She noticed. Her eyes flicked to my hand, then back to my face. She didn't say anything, but the silence between us pressed a little heavier. There was nothing extraordinary about it. Her sipping from her cup, me staring at the scuffed tiles on the floor. But it felt like a moment you'd think back to later, wondering why it had stayed. Finally, she closed her book fully and slid it into her bag. "You cut through here often," she said, standing. "Yeah," I admitted. She gave me that same almost smile again, softer this time. "Then I'll see you around." And just like that, she was gone, the bell above the laundromat door giving a half-hearted ring. That night, back in my apartment, I caught myself scrolling through old messages I never sent. Drafts that began with, "Hey, how have you been?" Or "Are you free tonight?" All unfinished, abandoned in the same way. I shut the phone off and stared at the wall instead. At some point, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Hers, maybe. They stopped outside my door for a second. Or maybe I imagined that. When I finally opened my phone again, there was a message waiting. A number I didn't recognize, just 6 words, "Don't let me catch you avoiding me." I read it 3 times, pulse in my throat. I didn't answer. Not yet. But my receipt, the one I'd folded and unfolded all afternoon, was still sitting on the counter, perfectly creased. I didn't reply to her message that night. I just kept staring at it, like maybe it would disappear if I waited long enough. But the next morning, when I stepped into the hall, she was there, keys in hand, coat half-buttoned, waiting on the elevator. "Morning," she said, without looking at me. I nodded, clutching the strap of my bag like it was a shield. She tilted her head slightly, noticing. "You got my text." Her voice was steady, but I caught something in her eyes, like she was daring me to pretend otherwise. "I did," I admitted. And I shifted. The hallway light buzzed overhead. "I didn't think I was avoiding you." She gave the smallest laugh. "You almost always think you're invisible. You're not." The elevator dinged, and for a second I thought she'd step in and leave me standing there. But she didn't. She waited, and I found myself walking beside her instead. That evening, she knocked on my door. I hadn't expected it. She held out a small tin. "Chamomile. Helps at night." I stared at it, then at her. "You think I need help sleeping?" "Everyone does, at some point." She pushed it into my hands before I could argue. It felt strange, standing in my doorway, holding something that smelled faintly of her kitchen. I should have said thank you and closed the door, but but instead I found myself stepping back. "Do you want to come in for a minute?" She hesitated, then nodded. Her eyes moved around my apartment like she'd been here before in her mind. The worn couch, the pile of books I never finished, the mug on the counter with last night's tea stain. She didn't comment, but I saw her take it in. "You live simply," she said, sitting down without waiting for me to invite her. "I guess." She touched the corner of a book on the coffee table, turning it slightly. Then she looked at me. "When I was your age, I thought I'd travel everywhere. Paris, Lisbon, anywhere with a train station. You didn't." She shook her head. "Life turned into something else. Marriage, work, staying put." She paused, her eyes flicking toward the window. "Then it turned into not marriage. Divorced." She didn't say it, but I heard it anyway. I didn't know what to do with that information, so I busied myself boiling water for the tea she'd brought. My hands were restless, fussing with the kettle, tapping the counter, folding the edge of the tea box. "Behind me," she said softly. "You remind me of that part of myself. The one that wanted to leave." My chest tightened. "That's not a compliment." Her voice warmed, a hint of dry humor. "Maybe not, but it's not an insult either." We sat across from each other, mugs warming our hands. The steam curled upward between us, carrying the faint scent of chamomile. "You shouldn't," I started, then stopped. "Shouldn't what?" "Say things like that." Her eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, but in awareness. She set her mug down carefully. "And you shouldn't look at me the way you do." The silence after that felt alive, stretching too far and not far enough. I broke it first. "Maybe we both shouldn't be here." "Maybe," she agreed. But she didn't stand up. When she finally left, she touched my arm lightly as she passed. Just a brush of her fingers, nothing anyone else would have noticed. But it stayed burning on my skin long after the door closed behind her. That night, I didn't drink the tea. I just kept holding the tin she gave me, wondering if she meant for it to sit in my hands like a promise or a warning. The next few days, I tried to settle back into my routine, cutting through the laundromat, walking past her door without slowing down. It didn't work. Every sound in the hallway felt like it belonged to her. One evening, I caught myself listening. Not for music or TV or even footsteps. Just her. The muffled sound of a drawer closing, the faint clink of a cup. Ordinary noises, but they drew me closer to her door before I realized what I was doing. I almost knocked. My hand even hovered there. But then the stairwell door opened behind me. "Hey," my friend Mark called, jogging up with his laundry bag. "You heading down?" I pulled my hand back like I'd been caught stealing. "No, just..." I gestured vaguely at the wall, heat crawling up my neck. He didn't notice. "Cool. I'll catch you later." And just like that, I was walking back into my own apartment, pulse racing, ashamed at how obvious I must have looked, even if he hadn't seen. 2 nights later, she found me first. It was raining hard, the kind of sudden summer storm that left the hallways damp from people shaking off umbrellas. I was crouched by my door, wrestling with a grocery bag that had split open, pins rolling everywhere. She appeared, umbrella still dripping, her hair slightly undone from the wind. "You always manage to make an entrance," she said, bending to catch a can before it rolled into the stairwell. I tried to laugh it off. I didn't know this counted as one. We gathered the mess together, shoulders brushing when we both reached for the same can. Too close, too casual to be casual. When I looked up, she was already watching me. Her eyes didn't dart away this time. "Do you want help?" she asked. "With what?" "Whatever you'll let me help with." The words landed heavier than they should have. Back in my apartment, we unpacked the rest of the groceries together, like it was something we'd done before. She set items on the counter, wiping her damp hands on a paper towel. I filled the silence with pointless chatter, prices, brands, small jokes about store lines. She didn't laugh much, but she stayed. At one point, she reached for a glass on the shelf, standing just close enough that I felt the warmth of her arm against mine. Not touching, not really, but I froze. "You're quiet tonight," she said softly. I shook my head, just trying not to say the wrong thing. Her breath caught, a small sound, but sharp enough that I noticed. "Maybe there isn't a right thing," she said. We stood like that, her hand lingering on the glass, mine resting on the counter edge. inches apart. Then the knock came. Sharp, too loud against the fragile silence. My neighbor, Mrs. Callahan, calling through the door. Sweetheart, did I leave my umbrella in your cart? I stepped back fast, almost guilty. She looked at me once, quick and unreadable, then moved toward the door. No, sorry, haven't seen it. I called out, trying to sound normal. We waited until the footsteps faded before either of us breathed again. Her eyes were on me when I turned back. That's what I mean, she whispered. What? That someone always knocks before you're ready. She didn't explain further, just reached out, brushed her hand against my sleeve, then pulled back. A near touch, gone too fast. I wanted to close the gap between us, say something I couldn't take back. Instead, all I managed was her name, half formed on my tongue. She looked at me like she was waiting for more. I didn't give it. Not why it was late, later than I ever usually stayed out, when I saw her again. The rain had stopped, and the sidewalk shone with leftover puddles. I was sitting on the bench outside our building, earbuds in, but no music playing, just trying to look like I belonged there. She appeared from the corner, carrying a bag from the corner store. A bottle of seltzer inside clinked against something else. She noticed me, slowed. You're always waiting for someone, she said. I'm not. I answered too quickly. She tilted her head, studying me in that way she had, the kind that made me feel seen in places I didn't know I had. Then she sat down beside me, placing the bag on the ground between us. You ever wonder, she asked after a long silence, how many chances you've already wasted without knowing? Her words sank into the night air. I looked at her profile, her jaw lit by the faint glow of the streetlight, the crease near her eye when she squinted. Every day, I admitted. She opened the bag, pulled out a packet of crackers, tore it without much care. She offered me one. I took it, though my hand shook slightly. I almost called you yesterday, she said, looking straight ahead. But then I didn't. Why not? She shrugged, chewing slowly. Felt like I'd be crossing something. The bench creaked when I shifted closer, just enough to hear her breath. Like what? You're too young to understand. The words stung more than I expected. Try me. She turned then, really turned, her eyes holding mine. I don't do this, she said, voice quiet. Not anymore. I had a marriage. I had the mess that came after. I had people watching, judging. I told myself that was enough. But her voice cracked, only slightly, and she stopped. I waited. She rubbed her palms against her knees, restless. It feels like I'm doing something reckless just sitting here with you. I wanted to laugh, but it came out wrong, bitter. It's just a bench. It's not just a bench, she whispered. A car passed, its headlights sweeping across us for a moment. I caught the shine in her eyes, the way she bit the inside of her cheek. You think I don't notice, she said. How you look at me. How you stop yourself. I swallowed hard. Maybe I'm trying to respect you. Her laugh was short, almost sharp. Respect. That's what you call it. I looked away, at the street, at the puddles reflecting the lights. My voice felt heavier than it should. What do you want me to call it then? The silence stretched, so long I thought she wouldn't answer. But then, I want you to admit it scares you too. I turned back. She was closer than before, though I didn't remember her moving. It does, I said finally. She exhaled, long and shaky, like she'd been holding her breath for weeks. Her hand brushed the bench between us, not touching me, but close enough I could feel the heat of it. If I asked you something now, she said, her voice barely a whisper, would you tell me the truth? The night leaned in. The street was quiet. I didn't answer. Not yet. Her eyes searched mine, waiting. And that was where the moment broke, hanging between what could happen and what shouldn't. The next morning, she was different. No quiet glance in the hallway, no almost smile. Just a nod, brief and formal, as if I were another neighbor she barely knew. I told myself not to notice, but I noticed everything. The way she kept her door half closed while unlocking it. The way her footsteps were quicker than usual, her eyes never lingering. That evening, I found myself listening again. The sounds were there, her television on low, the faint clink of dishes, but no pauses, no hesitations, no reasons for me to think she was listening for me. 2. 3 days passed. I didn't see her once. By the 4th, I gave up cutting through the laundromat. I changed my routes, stayed later at the library, even let my phone die, so I wouldn't check for messages that weren't coming. It worked, in the way bandages do, covering without healing. Until Saturday night, when I came back and found a box outside her door. A child's toy sticking out of the top. I froze. The next morning, the box was gone. But later, I heard a smaller pair of footsteps running inside her apartment. A child's laugh, muffled but clear. That night, I sat with my phone open, thumbs over the keyboard. You have a kid? Delete. Why didn't you say something? Delete. I thought I knew you. Delete. Nothing sounded right. Nothing felt like it would land where I needed it to. Instead, I typed, "Do you want me to leave you alone?" I didn't send it. On Sunday, I caught sight of her in the parking lot. She wasn't alone. A man stood near her car, handing over a duffel bag to the small boy climbing into the back seat. Her son, I realized. And the man, her ex. She looked smaller then. Not fragile, but tired in a way I hadn't seen before. She kept her voice light for the boy, her movement steady, but I noticed the flick of her hand pushing her hair back, the way her shoulders hunched just slightly. When the car door shut, her ex leaned in closer than he needed to. She didn't step back. She didn't smile either. Just endured. I stood behind the blinds of my window, watching a scene that wasn't mine to watch, hating how much it mattered to me. Later, in the hallway, she finally saw me. We both stopped. Her son was tugging at her sleeve, asking something about dinner. She gave me a glance, barely there, but weighted with meaning I couldn't name. And then she kept walking. No words. No explanation. I didn't follow. That night, the silence in my apartment felt heavier than usual. The chamomile tin still sat untouched on my counter. I stared at it, then at the wall, then at my phone again. Draft after draft. All unfinished. Finally, I typed one last message. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. I stared at it until the screen dimmed. And then I closed the phone without sending it. The week stretched longer than it should have. We crossed paths twice. Once at the mailbox, once in the stairwell. But both times it was brief, her son there as a quiet shadow between us. She kept her tone even, polite, never more. I mirrored her, as if politeness could protect us from what we'd already started. But on Thursday night, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find her standing there. No makeup, hair loose, wearing the kind of sweater you don't put on for company. She held the chamomile tin I'd never used. "You left this too long," she said. Her voice was steady, but her fingers tapped against the tin, restless. I thought maybe it wasn't mine to use. She exhaled, a short laugh with no humor. "Everything feels like that lately." I stepped aside. She came in. We sat at my kitchen table, the small light above us casting more shadow than it erased. The kettle hissed. I poured water, set her mug in front of her. Neither of us spoke until the steam had begun to curl. Finally, she said, "You shouldn't have seen that. With him." I shook my head. It wasn't about him. Her hands curled around the mug, tightening. "It always will be. He's part of everything. Even now. And me?" The words were out before I could stop them. She flinched slightly, not from the question, but from the way I asked it. She didn't look at me when she answered. "You're the part that makes no sense." The silence after that was sharp. I traced the rim of my own cup, avoiding her eyes. "I can stop," I said finally. "Whatever this is, I can stop." She looked up then, and for the first time in days, I saw something unguarded. Fear, maybe, or longing. Hard to separate the two. "You think it's that simple?" she asked. "No," I admitted. "But I'd try. For you." Her lips parted like she was going to argue, but nothing came. Just a long pause. Then she whispered, "Do you know what it feels like? To want something that makes you ashamed and grateful in the same breath." I couldn't answer. Not right away. So I reached across the table, laying my hand near hers. Not touching, but close enough that the warmth bridged the gap. "I think I'm starting to." The kettle clicked off. Neither of us moved. She let out a breath she must have been holding for hours. Her hand shifted, sliding over mine, the barest pressure of skin against skin. "You're going to regret me," she said quietly. "Maybe," I said, "but I'd regret walking away more." That was the closest either of us had come to naming it. For a long time, we just sat there, Hands still, mugs cooling. The room heavy with everything unspoken. No grand declarations. No promises. Just the small risk of contact, the fragile relief of not hiding anymore. When she finally looked at me, her eyes softer now, she gave a small, tired smile. Okay, she said. And somehow that was enough. Winter faded almost without us noticing. The snow thinned, the sidewalks cleared, and the air stopped biting so sharply in the mornings. Life, as it does, kept moving forward, groceries bought, bills paid, mornings at 8:47 where we each left for work. Only now, something was different. It wasn't sudden. There was no scene of us falling into each other's arms. No confession scrawled across the night. It was in the small things, the way she lingered at my door with a mug of tea, the way I'd set my alarm 10 minutes earlier just to catch her on the bench downstairs before her shift. The way her son slowly stopped frowning when he saw me and started asking if I wanted to join them for takeout on Fridays. A rhythm formed. Not perfect, not even easy some days, but steady. I remember the first time she made coffee for me instead of tea. It was a Sunday, late morning. I'd been fixing the loose handle on her kitchen drawer, pretending not to notice her watching me. When I finished, she set down a mug, black coffee, no sugar. I thought you'd want the real thing, she said. I smiled into the steam. Guess you're stuck with me knowing my habits. She shook her head. Guess I am. There was no tension in her voice anymore. No flinch of guilt. Just acceptance, simple, quiet, earned. Time stretched. Weeks became months. We never named what we were, but it didn't matter. Her son started leaving the room without suspicion when I stayed over for dinner. The neighbors stopped raising their eyebrows at the sight of us walking back from the market together. And us. We stopped pretending there was anything left to resist. Still, there was no moment where we sat down and said it out loud. Instead, there were moments like these. Her brushing snow off the bench at 8:47 just so I wouldn't sit on the cold. Me keeping chamomile stocked in my cupboard, even though I never drank it. The two of us sitting at my kitchen table, mugs cooling, hands brushing and staying there a little longer each time. Not love declared. Love lived. One evening, almost a year later, we walked past the bench where everything started. It was spring now, cherry blossoms sticking to the wet wood, petals scattered on the ground. She stopped, pressing her palm against the backrest as though testing its memory. Funny, she said softly. This feels smaller than I remember. I sat down beside her. Maybe we just fit it better now. She glanced at me, smiling in that tired, familiar way, the one that said she didn't need big words anymore. That being here, beside me, was enough. And it was. Life didn't suddenly smooth itself out. She still worked late shifts sometimes. I still woke early, restless. We still argued about silly things, her forgetting to lock the back door, me leaving dishes in the sink. But underneath it all, there was a steadiness neither of us had expected, like we'd carved out a place in each other's days that wasn't going anywhere. The kind of love that doesn't shout. The kind that lingers, like the smell of coffee on a morning bench. That night, before bed, she set a mug down beside me without asking. Tea for her. Black coffee for me. I looked at her, and she raised her eyebrow like it was a private joke. And in a way it was. Because no one else would understand why the sight of two mismatched mugs on the same table felt like a promise. Final reflection, love didn't arrive with fireworks. It arrived like tea left steaming on the counter, like black coffee poured without asking, like a bench at 8:47 that became ours. Quiet. Real. Enough. Sparkle's engagement close. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?